Welcome to March Crystal Visions. And this month we have our regular stone for March, which is aventurine. And we'll talk about that just really briefly. And then our lithomancy divination for this year put us with Shungite, which is a stone from Russia. It is our March stone. And then the meteorite that we are exploring this month is called Cybele's needle. And it was a very famous meteorite that fell to the earth in Anatolia and ended up in Rome. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But we're going to just start with aventurine. So every month of every year, the temple works with particular stones that I've dedicated to particular goddesses. And so we are working in the month of March with aventurine. That's the temple stone that we associate with the goddess Tara. There's not a historical association of aventurine with Tara. Rather, it's because aventurine comes in the same colors that the goddess Tara comes in when she's in her 21 forms. So all of the 21 forms of Tara range from white to green to orangish, gold to red to blue and blue-black. And so it's like basically your 5 primary colors in Tibetan Buddhism are going to be white, yellow, gold, saffron-ish, red or red-orange, green, and blue or blue-black. And ironically, or not so ironically, aventurine comes in those same colors. There's a reddish pinkish form, there's a golden orangish yellow form, there's a white form, there's a green form, and there's a blue form. And that's why we associate aventurine with Tara, because the colors of aventurine match her colors. But we also associate aventurine with the goddess Tara because it is a stone that promotes courage, spontaneity, joy, adventure, action, activation, and these are all aspects of the goddess Tara as well. So in her forms, the white Taras are for healing and purification. The green Taras are usually for devotion and help, assistance, aid in times of sorrow. The golden color Taras or yellow Taras tend to be for wealth. The red Tara is for magnetizing or attracting, and the blue, black, or blue Tara is for wrathful manifestation, protection, preventing negativity, or destroying negative circumstances and obstacles. So when we work with those various forms of Tara in their various colors, we can actually then turn to aventurine. And if we wanted to get a piece of each of those colors of aventurine, then when we do our daily reading for Tara, where we're honoring one of the 21 Taras every day in our practice, we could pick up that piece of aventurine and carry it around. So far, I've got the blue, the white, the blue, the white, the green, the kind of pinkish color, and I'm still missing a piece of the golden aventurine, but eventually I'll find one. So, that's just our normal monthly, every month, every year in March, we're with aventurine. So it's just a quick synopsis. The stone we pulled in our lithomancy divination for 2023 is Shungite. I only have one piece of Shungite in my collection, which is really interesting because for most of the stones that I have, I've got kind of a couple different pieces, just because over the years of owning a crystal store, I'm like, oh, I don't have a square one. Oh, I don't have a round one, And so I would just pick them up from little batches. But I've only ever felt motivated to purchase one piece of Shungite, and it's this little egg. This little egg represents such an interesting history. And shungite comes in lots of different forms. It comes in, obviously, this little egg shapes. It also comes in flat pieces that you can stick onto a door or onto an object to block negativity. It comes in amulets that you can wear, some of which are smooth, some of which are carved. It comes in rings, earrings, and it also comes just in, regular tumbled stone shapes. But I wanted to just talk a little bit about shungite because for the longest time, I did not really understand the difference between shungite and jet. So I wanted to kind of bring that to the forefront today. Where is it here? Here we go. So shungite is actually like a pretty modern discovery in the mineral kingdom. Jet is much older. We know that jet was used in like ancient Egypt, in ancient Greece. And the reason that jet is such a popular stone in ancient times is because it is basically the fossilized remains of trees that burned down in ancient wildfires in the primeval forests and got closely compacted down over time until they petrified and became stone. So even though jet is technically a stone, it's very light because it's also technically petrified wood. We classified jet as a crystal, but it's really a form of petrified wood. But it's not any petrified wood, and it's not merely petrified wood that's like floated in the ocean until it calcified, or petrified wood that was compacted and until it fossilized. It's actually petrified wood of ancient wildfires. And that's a very sort of special quality. And for years, I thought that shungite was the same thing. Turns out it's not. Shungite is a pure carbon. It is not fossilized petrified wood. It does not have copper, manganese, or any of the other elements or minerals in it. It is pure carbon, and it's carbon that comes from one very specific region in Russia, although other deposits of it have now been found on a couple other continents. We'll talk about that in a bit. But shungite first enters into the written record in 1706 during the reign of Peter the Great. He reigned until 1721. He ordered his assistant or his minister to bring a stone from its deposit, which is on the border, kind of on the edge of the Russian Sea between Russia and Finland. And he said, please go fetch me some of this stone. And they called it Aspidny stone. Aspidny is the ancient name, and that's spelled Aspidniy. And the reason that he wanted it fetched was to bring some of it to his summer palace, to place it into the fountains that were kept at his summer palace to purify the water. Because one of the things that shungite, being pure carbon, does is it filters impurities out of water. And one of the forms you can get shungite in actually is in the form of like a water filter that you can attach to your sink in your home, or that you can you can get a shungite water pitcher so that you can pour your tap water into it and it will filter out impurities. It is known that from at least that time of 1706, it had already been mined for a long time at that point, but it hadn't really been talked about or written about. It's not in any of the ancient uh stone volumes. It's not in the old grimoires. It's a very sort of specialized stone, and it was really popular in Russia for a long time before anyone else knew about it. But the Russians knew about it for forever. I mean, for hundreds of years at least. When Peter the Great had that stone installed in the fountains at his summer palace, he found it to be very successful in helping to keep the water clean and free of disease, filtering the impurities from the water. So he had more Shungite mined, and he brought it to a healing mineral spa, a place in Petrozavodsk, Petrozavodsk. I think I'm saying it right. Petrozavodsk. And it's in the same area that it's mined, which is Karelina. Karelina is, like I said, is on that border between Finland and Russia. And there's a shelf of this Shungite that juts out into the sea and comes back on land. So the name of that Shungite deposit is Shungsko, and Shungsko has been studied by scientists. And there are other deposits, Maksovo, Nigoshero, and Zhazhogino, which are all in Karelia, not Karelina. Karelia is the province of Russia where these are kept, or where these are found. So basically, let me see if I can make this bigger. Basically, in this map, you can see like where Shungite is found in Russia. So it's really all across basically what we call Siberia and in a couple other places. Now, because Shungite is made of pure carbon, it's actually pretty fragile. Carbon is the basic element that creates both pencil lead, graphite, as well as creating diamonds. And it just depends on the amount of heat and pressure that it's subject to. So just like when we covered like amethyst and citrine, and how amethyst becomes citrine when there's more heat and more pressure, so that basically, like if you purchase a piece of really orange citrine, you know that maybe at one time it was a light purple color, and over the years of heat and pressure, it was transformed into citrine. Similarly, if you get a piece of Shungite, you're actually technically holding a pre-diamond. It's not a diamond yet. It would have to be in the ground for, a couple, maybe million more years, and would have to be subjected to intense heat and pressure, but it would eventually become a diamond. So when you get pieces of Shungite, they're very naturally crumbly, and they leave a very thick, like black soot on everything that they touch, because it's basically pencil lead, it's graphite. So once Shungite has been tumbled, then they'll put large pieces in the tumbler, they'll tumble them with some grit to make it smooth, and usually they add a little bit of oil to the process. So once it's been tumbled, the oil seals that Shungite. And I have a feeling that that's part of the reason why I only have this one tumbled piece, because I don't really want to pick up a stone and like have it get dirty and get all over my clothes. And, I wouldn't put like a piece of raw Shungite like in my pocket, because it would cause problems. But I do think that raw Shungite, like in a water filter, makes a lot of sense. And I've drunk Shungite water before. I have a friend who created actually the first Shungite water filter system. And she actually does combinations of Shungite with quartz, Shungite with lithium quartz, and garnet. And these are some of the stones that partner well with shungite, because shungite will remove the impurities, and then the quartz, for example, will amplify intentions. Lithium quartz will bring peace and calm. Garnet will bring zest for life, so that in that filtration process, you're basically, when you drink that water, imbibing water that's for purification of what's not right for you, as well as bringing in what is right for you. Okay, so after, let's see here, after the spa was developed, that with Peter the Great, he had them install shungite there, and the water would flow over the shungite out into the spa, so that people were receiving its healing properties. And Peter the Great went to that spa personally more than once. And today, the original spa is still there, but similarly to like Bath in England, you can't go in the water at the original spa anymore. You can go and visit it as a historical site, but there's a new spa that's like right around the corner or just down the road that is more modern and has more modern filtration processes, and you can go to that spa. So if you ever find yourself in Karelia and you decide you're going to go to Petrozavodsk and go to the spa there, you'll have to let me know how it turns out. Peter the Great also ordered his soldiers to carry pieces of shungite as part of their little pack of provisions during the various military campaigns. And in one of those military campaigns, they were up against the Swedish army in what was called the Battle of Poltava, which is in 1709. And the Swedish army had already, on their journey to the battle site, contracted waterborne infections, parasites, illness, maybe, who knows, lots of different things live in waters that are stagnant. And so the Swedish army arrived at the battle already ill from water impurities, and the Russian soldiers arrived at the battle absolutely healthy and ready to go. And that's one of the reasons why it was said that they won that particular battle. When we see shungite, there are different grades of shungite. There's one grade of shungite that is like this. This is a piece of it's called noble shungite. So it's hard to see it, but it almost has like a silvery sheen to it. Like if I turn it a little, you can kind of see it. It's not like moonstone, where it's got that like really vivid cat's eye kind of chatoyancy, or that kind of inner glow, but it is just like a very subtle sort of surface silvery sheen on top of the black, kind of like if you see a black cat that has little silver tips on its fur. It's mostly black, but with that little silver sheen. That's now known as noble shungite. It's 98% pure carbon. It really can't be tumbled. It's very soft, and it can only be hand carved. And this piece was hand carved. The regular shungite is a little bit hardier, a little hardier grade. It's more like between 70 to 80% carbon. It's got a little bit harder grade. And then there's even one step down from that, which is another form of shungite that they probably only use for commercial purposes. It's not really used production wise in the crystal industry, because it's only 30% carbon. So just like a little bit of history about shungite. Now, shungite grows in interesting ways. As pure carbon, it doesn't have, with no other minerals in it, it doesn't actually have an inherent crystalline matrix that it has to obey. So it can grow in sheets, it can grow in blocks, but it can also grow in these like kind of bubble formations. And it all depends on where it's growing. That will determine what type of formation it grows in. The bubble formations have been said to have a unique type of carbon molecule that causes that bubble formation to happen. And sometimes they are said to be I don't know if you have like metaphysical kind of geeks in the room here, maybe you know what I'm talking about, but Buckminster Fuller talked about molecular structure being this spherical shape, and he basically innovated a type of view of our universe that's based on a spherical shaped structure that starts at the cellular level or the molecular level and can go all the way to like the planetary level. And so these spherical structures that Buckminster Fuller promoted became known as buckyballs. That's what they called them in like the 1970s and 80s. And the spheroid types of shungite, pure carbon in the spheroid format that has a particular growth pattern, have also been labeled buckyballs. And sometimes, and they have a unique molecular structure, which is called fullerene after Buckminster Fuller. So if there's anybody like me who was like a Nova geek way back in the day, you may have heard of Buckminster Fuller, you may have heard of buckyballs, but if not, you can go look those things up. They're like a fun part of our kind of metaphysical history, because they're one of those things, that was like both scientifically probable as well as magical. Okay, so what do we use shungite for? Well, obviously we use it for purification, but we also use it, we can use it for purification emotionally and energetically. We can use it for purification of our water. You can get a piece of shungite and put it in your water glass and drink it safely. You can have shungite near your bed to help you keep any bad dreams away. You can put shungite into like a let's say if you have a child who's going to school, you can put tuck a little piece into their backpack to help them stay safe from germs at school. And all right, see you later. See you later, Kristen. So you can kind of attach, you can get like one of the shungite amulets and attach it to your pet's collar. You can actually put shungite in a water dish that your pets will drink out of, or use it as a filter for your pet's water to help cope with anxiety if you have an anxious dog or an anxious cat, or if you have just like some wacky energies going on in your house or with your pets. You can put shungite into a crystal grid, like with other minerals, to block negative interference. If you have an intention that you're afraid that other people might, like an idea that other people might steal, or you want to preserve something and keep it kind of secret, you could write that petition on a piece of paper and put it into like a small bag with a piece of shungite like this. And you can take a piece into the bath with you and let it float around and do its thing and purify you as you're sitting in those healing waters. So the other thing, as I mentioned briefly before, but it's actually really a big deal, is in a lot of spiritual people do this, is that people will get these very small, thin, flat pieces, either like rectangles or squares or circles or triangles of shungite that have been backed with like a 3M sticky paper or like something like that. so that they can stick it onto their phone, because it's said that Shungite will help to block EMFs. And since, EMFs and the radiation from our devices and the interference energetically from our devices is kind of a hot topic, especially as our world becomes more computer literate and device associated. Over time, Shungite will become more and more popular for this purpose, I think. You can get pieces of it and put a piece on top of your computer, and you can put a piece maybe like on if you get the kind that stick on, you can stick it onto your phone. You could stick one onto your laptop. You could stick one onto your router where your internet comes into the house, your modem or your router. And I think that, this is like a really good little place for me to talk about this. I love I love living in the animistic universe. So for me, everything has a sort of a nature, a personality, a spirit. Like my computer has a spirit that lives in it and makes things happen. My phone has its own personality. The toaster has a personality. The car has a name, Jane Honda. Like there's, all kinds of different animistic practices that I have of just like inspiriting my world and acknowledging that everything made of substance, seemingly made of substance, has energy, and that energy, I can either befriend it or not. And actually in our previous presentation where Priestess Nim was talking about social media sorcery, she said something about befriending the algorithm and treating the algorithm of your social media as if it were a living thing. And I liked that very much because that's really the kind of world I live in too. That said, I like crystals. I have crystals for computers, like where the crystal belongs to the computer. And Shungite is one. This little piece kind of stays ambiently in the area where I store my computer and all my devices, like my batteries and packs and stuff like that. It lives right near there. And I also have in my crystal collection pieces of bismuth and pieces of silicon, really just like silicon that's been pre-processed. It's not like silicon like you'd see in an implant or something, or silicon that's like soft and rubbery. It's in its like hard, jagged, pre-processed form. And I have a piece of silicon and a piece of bismuth. And whenever my computer is acting up, I bring the computer their crystals. And I'm like, here, have this offering so that you will be a little bit happier. And so you might think about some of these crystals that are associated with like EMFs and frequencies like that as potentially being crystals that you give to your computer. And especially because Shungite is very affordable, you can, get a couple of pieces for a couple of dollars and just either DIY with your own 3M tape or use a piece of, I don't know, duct tape, stick the crystal onto your device and see if it improves things. So that's Shungite for today. And then our last little aspect of today is, I'm so excited about this. We're going to talk about the meteorite that was worshipped as the goddess Cybele. So the scene. It is, let's see here. We don't know exactly when the meteorite that became known as Cybele fell, but history and geology has shown us that, let's see here. Oh, yes, I've spent my life naming everything around me and treating them as living beings. Even my water tank has a name. That's right. I think it's actually, it makes the world a richer place to inspirit your objects. Okay, so we don't know exactly when the meteorite that became known as the goddess Cybele fell. What we do know from the historical and geologic record is that about 345 BC, a massive rain of meteorites fell over Rome, and that the Romans looked and fell over the kind of Mediterranean region. And we have corroboration from other textual sources that there were a vast number of meteorites that fell during a particular time. And when I can, I'm going to track down to find out what scientists think broke apart that we had so many meteorites falling to the earth, especially in the Mediterranean region, Rome, Greece, Anatolia, even though Anatolia is technically Central Asia, but also into China and into the Himalayas. And to this day, we still have rains of meteorites that fall in particular areas, but generally all of the rains of meteorites that we've ever had that fell all at once to the earth usually fell as the result of either a comet or an asteroid or some kind of a planet, small demi-planet, breaking apart and getting caught into the earthly orbit, and the pieces get caught in the earthly orbit, and some of them, the heaviest ones, fall through the orbit and land on Earth, and some stay in the planetary orbit, which is why we to this day see meteor showers like the Perseids or the Leonids or any of these number of meteor showers that come around seasonally. The reason they come around seasonally is because that is where they are in the orbit, in the gravity of the planet. They are in the atmosphere, and they are pieces of asteroids, comets, larger meteors, and even moons or small planets that broke apart at a certain period in cosmological time and fell to Earth. So we know of several of these large meteorites that probably all fell somewhere during that 345 BC time, although in some cases they were much older. We know of the ones that fell over Rome. We know of the one that fell on the island of Cyprus that is worshipped as the goddess Aphrodite there at Paphos. We know of the one that fell in Anatolia that then was worshipped as the Phrygian Great Mother, Mater Kubalaya. And we know at least one other that fell in Rome and was venerated. But the ancient Egyptians worshipped meteorites and made tools from them, as we talked about in a previous crystal visions. And so, and we also know of one that fell at Delphi, that the original omphalos stone that fell to the ground at Delphi was likely a meteorite, even though later it was a carved stone that, came from Mount Parnassus, when it was because maybe the meteorite was broken or something happened to it. So we'll explore more of those meteorites later as we go through the year. But this one, so in 345 BC, the poet, I think it's the poet or the historian Livy, Livy, says, a shower of stones rained down and darkness filled the sky during daylight. And the ancient Romans considered this an omen. And so they went to the Cybele books. The Cybele books had been acquired by the last king of Rome, Tarquinius, and Tarquinius had been offered 9 volumes by the Sibyl who approached him. And he said, for a particular price, and she said, they contain all the answers to your questions about how to save Rome. And he scoffed at her and he said, 9 books for that price? I can't imagine paying that. Go away. And she immediately threw 3 of the books into the fire and they burned up. And he was like, what are you doing? And she said, now I only have 6 of them to share with you. And he said, what's the price? And she said, it's the same price as if it were 9. And he was like, you must be out of your mind. There's no way I'm paying for 9 books and only getting 6. So she threw 3 more books into the fire. And then she was left with 3. And she said, if you want to save Rome, you're going to need these books. And he understood, and he accepted those books. And those books were kept in a special place on Palatine Hill, and they were consulted by priests when omens would appear. So in 345 BCE, omens, the rain of meteorites appeared in the sky to be an omen. They went and conducted the research of the Cybele books. And they also sent an envoy to the oracle at Delphi and said, what should we do? How can we prevent this? This seems like an omen of misfortune, an omen of negativity. And what the Cybele books came back with was that a national public holiday needed to be established for religious observance at that time, and that there was nothing else that was needed. So they established some kind of a national religious holiday and observed it. The meteorites went away, and then they came back 150 years later. And when they came back 150 years later, it was amidst Hannibal's assault on Rome. Hannibal, as you might remember, came from Carthage, and he had elephants, and he had weapons that were so far beyond what the Romans had, especially though the elephants were a really big deal for Hannibal. He could raise an entire town very swiftly. He seemed to be unstoppable. At that point, I think he had already been conducting this war for something like 12 or 15 years. So it was pretty intense that he was marching on Rome, and the Roman government was terrified that they were going to see the end of Rome. So they consulted the Cybele books. They sent an envoy to Delphi, which was still in operation. For over 2,500 years, the oracle at Delphi was the go-to oracle for the, Mediterranean world, if not the entire world, at least the European world, because we have records of people coming from all over. And so the Cybele books said, you will need to get something that has fallen from the heavens, and you will need to petition the Great Mother. And then they went to the oracle at Delphi, and she said, you need to bring the meteor that is Cybele from Anatolia to Rome. Now, at this time, the meteorites falling from the sky were a source of great concern. The armies were restless, but the Roman army was led by a man named Scipio. And Scipio the elder, he felt that he could appeal to the goddess and ask for her to help the army if he had the meteorite from Anatolia that was named by the Delphic oracle and that was named in the books. So he sent a group of people to petition to ask for that meteorite to be brought from Anatolia, from the Phrygian people to Rome to be worshipped. And this is one of the ways in which, like the goddess Isis, who totally girl bossed her way from being the guardian of the pharaoh's throne to being the goddess of all 10,000 names of the world, Cybele did the same thing with this move. She had been worshipped as a meteorite by the Phrygian people, by the local people of Anatolia as Mater Kubelaya, the mountain mother, or Meter in Greek, the mother of the animals, the wild mother. She was an Artemisian figure. She was an exotic figure. The Greeks and Romans were very organized in their religion and very precise. They had rituals for opening the shrines and rituals for greeting the deities and rituals for this. Cybele was orgiastic. She was unleashed. She was pure joy. She came accompanied by all of these priests and priestesses dressed the same in women's clothing, in fanciful garb, playing drums with music. There were huge orgies thrown in her name. She was a goddess of wildness. She was indomitable. So whereas the Greeks and Romans had kind of successfully colonized and in a way conscripted some of the other indigenous deities of these lands that they conquered and brought them under their own pantheon, and were then kind of controlling those deities with, or at least controlling the narrative of those deities, Cybele remained indomitable, uncontrollable. You could not divorce her from her orgiastic rites. They could not get people to stop drinking in her honor. They could not get people to stop having orgies in her honor. They could not stop people from performing acts of, ritual body modification as part of her rituals. They could not stop her. And it was said that she was very out of place in ancient Greece and ancient Rome, which were both really patriarchal cultures, and that there was always like a tension of having Cybele alongside some of the deities that represented the conquered narratives. So I just want to insert here that Cybele becomes a figure who we can call to for decolonization and for reparations and for when we need to resist being dominated by another energy or entity. So that's just, it seems like it's something important to share, that Cybele has always remained indomitable. So here we are, 205 BCE. It's agreed, okay, we're going to get the meteorite, we're going to Anatolia. Interestingly, here's what happened. Let's see here. When they went, let's see here. So the meteorite of Cybele was kept in Pessinus, which is in modern day Turkey. And they needed to figure out how to bring that meteorite from Turkey to Rome. And there was no alliance between Rome and Central Asia at the time. But because Rome and Turkey were both holding off Philip of Macedon and his invasions at that time, they kind of made for a casual alliance, and King Attalus of what's now modern day Turkey said he would send the meteorite known as Cybele. The meteorite known as Cybele was a teardrop shape, and I think I showed you the meteorite that I saw that was worshipped as Aphrodite. If I haven't, I'll show it next month. And the meteorite that was worshipped as Aphrodite was like a teardrop shape. But the tippity top of that drop was apparently very sharp, so sharp that it was called Cybele's needle. That's where we get the name Cybele's needle. A convoy of 5 different armies of like 50 to 500 people each were sent from Rome to go escort the meteorite from Rome to go escort the meteorite from Turkey to Rome. And the oracle at Delphi had said that the king of what's now known as Turkey, King Attalus, would help them, and that when they carried the goddess into Rome, whichever was the man who was the best of Rome should be the one to greet her and offer his hospitality. So when they first got to King Attalus, he said no. And they were shocked because the oracle at Delphi had said he would say yes. And so there was like a little bit of a moment there where they said, we've come in this dramatic fashion with all of these men to please bring the meteorite of Cybele. She must save Rome. And King Attalus said, no, I'm not giving up the goddess to you. And just then, an earthquake shook the whole palace. And it said that a voice came from the shrine of the meteorite that said, it is my will. Rome is a worthy place for any god. Delay not. So 1,000 men began to cut down pine trees to build a special ship just for this meteorite to sail along the Tiber River to Rome. So they built the ship, set it out to sea, brought it to the mouth of the Tiber River, and then on the shores, men with ropes and other ships towed the barge of Cybele, so that it was like the goddess herself did not need to make even one iota of effort to be carried. It was literally like they were carrying the goddess on a litter into Rome. And Scipio the elder had been instructed by the Sibylline texts to gather all the married women of Rome and have them all waiting, so that when the goddess landed, all the married women of Rome, and especially those of high society, were there to greet her along with himself. He was considered that best man of Rome, because you remember, he was the general of the army. He was the one who was like, defending Rome, basically. So he was considered the best of men. And big problem. That year there were drought conditions and the Tiber River was low and the ship could not make it all the way to Rome. So it was like banked. It just like beached before it and landed at Rome with the meteorite in it. And everyone was freaking out. Scipio is freaking out. All the young men who had been on the shores, like pulling the ropes and dragging the barge, they're all freaking out. How are we going to get this ship into the port of Rome? Up steps Claudia Quinta. Claudia Quinta was a high society matron who had fallen from grace because she was loud, opinionated. She was a little bit of a Miss Bossy Boots. She laughed a lot. She lived the way she wanted. She did what she wanted. She defied the mores of Roman society. She had quite a notorious way of being. And she was viewed as basically having a terrible reputation because of these qualities, even though she was from money and had all the proper quote unquote breeding and had all the proper education and blah, blah, blah. She was too smart. They didn't like her. She argued in public. She laughed in public. She danced. She ate. She talked. She did all the unmatronly things. But Quinta was among those married women standing there waiting for the meteorite to come. And so she said to Scipio, she said, this is what you have to do. You have to get all those men to attach their ropes to my girdle, and I will dislodge this boat. And so they did. They brought all of their ropes. I mean, they humored her, she all their best efforts had failed. They couldn't get the boat to move. They were struggling. They tried levers, they tried poles. They couldn't get the boat to move. And they said, okay, fine. So Claudia Quinta went with Scipio the elder. He helped her. She prayed before the mother goddess. She confidently directed all the men to tie the ropes of the ship to her girdle. And in that time, a girdle was like similar to what it is now, kind of like a waist trainer sort of a garment, a belted like waist trainer. They tied the ropes to her girdle. She prayed to the goddess and she started to pull, and the ship dislodged and started to sail and came into the port. And the goddess came ashore. And actually, what ended up happening after that was that all of the people who had been like rumor mongering and gossiping and kind of looking down on Claudia Quinta, actually after that were really like, oh my God, she's amazing. She's like the fiercest lady in the world. And she herself then in Roman society cast herself as an Amazon, and for the rest of her days walked around telling everyone she was one of the remaining Amazon warrior women in modern form. We love her for this, do we not? I love her so much. So Scipio walked out into the water. He received the stone from the priest. So this is not like a huge stone. They put it in his hands. He was able to hold it. He carried the stone to land and delivered it to the women, the married women of the city. And they passed it hand to hand and walked like in formation like that all the way up to Palatine Hill from the port, carrying the meteorite, the goddess herself embodied, and placed the goddess into the shrine on Palatine Hill. And there were a lot of orders that were given to the Roman people about how this would happen. Every house along the route from the port to Palatine Hill had to have, it was mandatory that they had to have incense burning outside of the house so that the goddess would walk through a cloud of incense. The people had to bring gifts, and it was, certain gifts were ordered. There was a religious feast and then 8-day long festival that commenced once the meteorite was placed in the palace. And that 8-day festival was then celebrated every April thereafter because it happened in the month of Aprilis. So Cybele was then presented to the Senate, and what they did was the Senate had a statue of Cybele built, and they took the meteorite and they put it as the face of the statue. So there was this beautiful crowned statue, goddess statue. It said that, let's see here, that the statue was created made of silver, and that the stone was put as the face or the head, and that for 500 years, that's how it stayed. Many different writers wrote about it. Some said that the stone was like brown or brownish black, that it had a pockmarked surface like modern day lava stone that you can see. And they then set about building her own temple. So the statue sat in Palatine Hill. It actually shared in this temple, I think it was on Palatine Hill, where it was Mithras, Cybele, and Pan all worshiped together. Pan, a Greek deity, Mithras, a Persian deity, and Cybele, an Anatolian deity. And that this was in a way that the Romans demonstrated that they wanted to remain on good terms with all of these people, these different countries. So the new temple was built. It took from 2004 BCE until 191 BCE. So that's what, 13 years to build the temple. They were building the whole time. They were working on this temple for 13 years. And on 11th of April, 191 BC, they installed the statue with the face of the meteor in the new Magna Mater temple and commenced the first Megalesia festival, which was her sacred festival thereafter. A Christian writer 500 years later writes this: if historians speak the truth and insert no false accounts, so this, and Arnobius is a Christian writer. He was popular writing right before Constantine did all of his stuff. So it's like, you know, the coming of Constantine times. So 500 years later, so we're talking about almost 500 AD or 500 CE. He says, if historians speak the truth and insert no false accounts into their records, there was brought from Phrygia, sent by King Attalus, nothing else in fact than a kind of stone, not a large one that could be carried in a man's hand without strain, in color tawny and black, having prominent irregular angular points, a stone we all see today, having a rough irregular place as the sign of the mouth, and having no prominence corresponding to a traditional face of an image. So they never carved the stone. There was just a marking on the surface that they used as the mouth of Cybele when they put it into her statue. Now, the saddest part, what happened to this meteorite? Because of course, don't we all just wish we could just go and kiss that meteorite? I would give that meteorite a kiss and ask for a miracle in a heartbeat. However, it was not to be. It said that when they excavated the palace of Caesar, the archaeologist at the time, Lanciani, went looking. He thought that meteorite must still be there, because after that 500 CE, the temple did burn. There were wars, there were problems, there were all kinds of things that happened. And so eventually, once the statue was no longer there, was destroyed in the fire, they collected the meteorite and they put it in hiding. And everyone thought that it had been hidden in one of Caesar's vaults. So when Lanciani went and was trying to search through Caesar's vaults for this particular relic, he didn't find it. He said, I had felt sanguine about the discovery of this relic, since it was an object too common to have attracted the attention either of the barbarians when they pillaged the palace, or of former excavators who were unacquainted with its value. My hopes were disappointed, however. It is only lately that I have learned of its discovery and its probable destruction in 1730. In reading a book written by Monsignor Francesco Bianchini on the excavations carried out on the Palatine by Duke Francis of Parma at the beginning of the last century, a book which is little known in spite of its enormous size and the useful information it contains, I have found the following passage. After describing the discovery of the private chapel of the emperors, Monsignor Bianchini says, I am sorry that no fragment of a statue or bas-relief or inscription has been found in the chapel, because this absence of any positive indication prevents us from ascertaining the name of the divinity to whom the place was originally dedicated. The only object which I discovered in it was a stone nearly 3 feet high, conical in shape, of a deep brown color, looking very much like a piece of lava and ending in a sharp point. But no attention was paid to it, and I know not what became of it. So what do you think? I think, I'm going to tell you what I think. And this is not me being like a conspiracy theorist, but I think it's in the Vatican. I think the Vatican has this meteorite. I'm pretty sure they still have it because they have a lot of things that were stolen from a lot of people. And this especially, it was right there. It wasn't like heavy to carry. It wasn't like they had to go conquer anyone in any foreign land as part of a crusade to get it. They were already right there. I think that to this day, the meteorite Cybele has not been destroyed because the Vatican is built on top of a ruin that used to be a temple of Cybele. So maybe someday we'll all go to Rome and we'll all get our like ninja outfits and we're going to find a way to get in and search in the catacombs of the Vatican, the deep pits down beneath the Vatican, and we're going to liberate the African statues and the Egyptian, relics, and we're going to liberate the ancient Greek and Roman gods, and we're going to find this meteorite, and we're going to bring her to the surface. But even if we never get to invade the Vatican and plumb its treasures and reverse colonize everything, we still know that Cybele, the ancient meteorite, the goddess that fell from heaven to earth to help humanity, is still with us energetically. And we will be honoring her in our spring equinox ritual at Cosmogenetrix this year. So now I hope that your appetite is wet for this next ritual that we're going to be doing in 2 weeks when we celebrate the spring equinox and Cybele at Cosmogenetrix, and where we ourselves stand between the two lions of Cybele energetically, and we say, Mother, come to earth, decolonize, be wild, we need you now. Thank you so much for coming today. It was fun to get to put this together for you. I hope you enjoyed it. And yes, and not to mention everything looted from Native America, not to mention everything looted right from Mexico and everywhere else. So thank you very, very much. I hope that you had fun, and we will be back with Crystal Visions in 1 month. See you.